Okay, so I've got my bolts painted on here. I pretty much went through and made sure I painted a bolt everywhere where generally I'd like to have one. If I find I want to come back later, it's no big deal. I can just come back to this bolt later and just paint a bolt down. It's on top of everything, so that's not a big deal. So the next thing we're gonna actually do is just to check this out. I went ahead and saved this and brought it into, reload it into Maya. And as you can see, it's already come along pretty good. It kind of has its own style already. It's already has its own kind of feel to it, especially with the color palette we've decided on, as well as the line, the variation we've kind of used to define everything. So it's looking pretty good so far. I like a lot of the seams and choices I made so far, but I definitely want to keep pushing this a lot further visually. So let's move on with that. And to do that, we're going to go back to Photoshop, and we're actually going to start. We want those lights that we have in our scene originally. These kind of Vegas style lights flashing here. We want to go ahead and start adding those to the scene. So let's go ahead back to our Photoshop file. And let's make a new layer for lights. And to do that, we're actually just going to use a simpler brush, but the same kind of effect as we did before. So we're just going to grab a brush like this, a circular brush, and we're going to go to our brush settings, and we're going to go to the brush and change the spacing. So we have the spacing high, so we need to make the size bigger. So to decide on, let's see what the size we need for our lights to be, and make the spacing a little bit less. And it looks maybe a slight bit more. Okay, so that looks good. So we're going to basically do our shift technique again, where we click and hold shift and then click again, and then we're going to get these lights that we're putting down placed correctly. And I'm going to go ahead and just place some lights like this, just kind of following the edge of this thing. If you want to come back and make sure maybe a little bit more, start from the middle, do it like that. Make sure these lights kind of flow along with the contour of the shape you have here. Because if you look at a lot of other signs, that's kind of how they do. They kind of flow along with the same shape. And keep doing that up here. Sometimes if you want to add some, you can always do that too. I'm going to squeeze another one in here. It's a little tight. Like I'll loosen that up a bit. Might hand paint these to make sure I get a good spacing. Okay, that's good spacing there. Keep going down this way. That looks pretty good there. And then the other place we're having lights is on this top part up here. So I'm going to hand paint these just kind of in a zigzag pattern. Squeeze as many as I can in there. Okay, now that we have that, we're going to right click and change our blending options. And we're going to change it so that we actually add a stroke to the outside of this. And we want to make it to the center. And we're going to add it as a black stroke. And then we're going to change our color overlay to a kind of a darker gray. So the darker gray is going to be our actual light bulb, and then the black is going to be the kind of like the housing of the silhouette for like the light bulb to be sitting in. So let's make this size to 2. Make sure I got that set to where I want it. And then sometimes I like to add like an inner glow slightly to kind of give the bulb a bit more. It looks like it's got a little bit more. Change it to center. So it actually got a little bit more of a bulbous look to it. So it actually looks like it's kind of standing out slightly. But I don't want to do that too much. Just slightly was good. And you can do a couple other things too if you want to add an outer glow and do kind of the same similar rusty effect we did with the other one. Change it to normal and add some noise to it. To kind of match our bolts there. Okay, so we got our lights set down. And might be a bit too much noise. Turn that down just a bit. You're gonna make sure your noise around your bolts don't get too much. You can always come back and adjust it based on the effect here that we've added. It's no big deal. That's why I like keeping those separate, so I can always kind of adjust that. It's not just like painted directly. And so we're gonna file, save as, save our target out, and we'll test this in the scene to see what it looks like. So everything looks good except for right here. We went a little too far, so we can go ahead and get rid of that line. And maybe we'll pull this out just a bit so you can see those two last bulbs there. So we didn't need this line right here, so we're going to go ahead and erase those. So we got those set, and what we're going to actually do is we're going to duplicate this layer, and we're going to move it up, and we're going to put it to its own group called emissive. And this is going to be the layer that we're actually going to use to generate our glow map. So we're going to duplicate the background layer, place it in the emissive, and turn that to black. And then we're going to get rid of our glow and our inner glow. And we just want our color overlay to be white for right now. So as you can see, now we've kind of started to establish our emissive map as we're going along. So we have that what's going to be glowing. And when we do the emissive map, we're actually going to save out the emissive map. We actually don't want the UV grouping on. So make sure this is by its own self. So we want it to be pretty much anything that's not going to have any kind of illumination, we want it to be black. And anything that will have illumination, we want it to be white. Kind of for right now as we're going about this. Later on, we'll be putting these into separate channels, but for now, this is just going to kind of help us establish the groundwork for what we'll be doing with the actual glow map, which is the emissive map. So we've established the diffuse. So let's go ahead and file, save this as again, just to check one more time before we move on. And let's reload it. Yep, and so now we're good with the lights. So the lights are pretty much placed where we want them to be, and we're good with that. So we're going to move on to the next part.